Welcome back, guys. Following on from last week's success of finally getting the engine running for the first time in a very long time, we're now going to look at trying to fix some fiddly little oil leaks. Let's go and take a look.
Are you listening? Damn.
Right then, first port of call, leaking distributor. Now, before you touch the distributor, make sure this doesn't happen. Because that really hurt. Not gonna lie, it really did. Anyway, now our problem with our distributor, I've made a few little phone calls and I've been told that some have an O-ring groove and some don't. Now, I already know, because we've had this one out a couple of times, that ours doesn't. So I'll just quickly pull it apart and then I'll show you what we propose to do to try and stop it leaking. But there are some issues to overcome as well, as always. So let's jump into it. Remove the dizzy. Now, we're not going to mark anything because we're pulling it apart and redoing our timing. You'll see that next week, unfortunately. But make sure you take a mark of the orientation of your distributor body and also where the rotor cap sits. Because when it meshes with the cam, you want it to come back to where it was, and then you want the body in the same orientation so that you get the spark at the correct time. Otherwise your car won't start. Right, as you can hopefully see, no O-ring groove. Now we have obviously put an O-ring at the top, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about why when we have a little look at the block itself. We have the clamp that holds the distributor body, and we've got a hole. Now the depth of that bracket is probably in the region of 3 to 4 millimeters, and we are proposing to put the O-ring round the body so that it will seal round here like this. We have tried putting a small O-ring at the top of the dizzy. Put it back in, it's too small, it leaks. Then we try a big O-ring so that it will seal, but the problem with putting a 3mm O-ring into the depth of the bracket, which is about 4 to 5mm, is you're only left with 1 or 2mm for the clamp to go onto the body. Now if I can just get you in there, you can see that you've got a small machined section that the bracket sits into. Now the back where that O-ring is sat onto it was very rough, so we filed it flat to try and give us a little bit more entry into the distributor, but it still leaks, and now the bracket's not holding, which is why I was able to pull that out without having to undo the bracket. So the only way to put this in with a thicker O-ring to cause it to seal is to push the bracket away from the block itself. So I've ordered some slightly longer 1/4 BSF bolts. We'll put some washers behind it, so that way we can throw the bracket away from the engine ever so slightly, and then we can pop our dizzy in. And as I say, next week we'll be setting the timing, so we'll take you through that too. The bracket I've opened back up, and it sits on this shoulder very nicely, so I'm relatively happy with that. However, it's a pressed bracket, so you've got a gap in behind it, so we're going to have to compensate for that when we washer our bracket away for the amount of O-ring that we're going to be putting on to create a seal. And also this square shoulder here, you put the bracket on square and it sits on levelly. But if you turn the distributor, which you're going to have to set your time in, it clashes. So we're left with either cutting meat out of the bracket or shaving a little bit, and I mean a little bit, a tiny bit, out of the corner of our distributor. So it's time to roll the dice and either modify bracket or modify dizzy. Let's look at the orientation of it in the car and see where it's going to clash, but I'm opting for the dizzy, I think. I know it's a little bit brutal, but if you modify the bracket and then you sit the dizzy in the car, and then you need to turn it to a point that is picking up on the other side of the bracket, and if that's in the way, then we're just going to be back to the same place we were. We're going to have leaks and it's not going to be lock and lock our dizzy. We're going to lose our timing, and always round, 'tis a waste of time. let's be brave. Let's clean everything up, bag it up, make it clinically clean, do our cut, get rid of all of our swarf. Job done. Right, all wrapped up, glove, tape, degrease, perfect. It looks like when someone goes in for an operation and we go, we're only working on that bit, so we'll just mask everything off so we don't hurt you. Right then, time for the scary bit. Emery on a drill, nice slow speed, take your time, nobody gets hurt. Safety first, guys, you can never be too careful. We want to literally just hold the dizzy. We don't want to squash it, don't want to hurt it. We can keep offering our bracket on and off until we can get full 360-degree rotation. Oopsie, a bit tighter. Without this ear on the bracket catching on that little lug there. Wish me luck. Barely any mess, and all the fuss was about. It has also come to my attention that that bracket is bent. I'll take that. Happy days. Right then, where were we? Right. That sits on there very nicely now. There's a tiny little bit of run out from side to side, but that could just be due to not being pushed on hard enough. But we're fully into the land of the distributor, so we should get a nice clamp on that. So now it's a case of popping on the earring that we propose to use, sticking a straight edge across the top of the O-ring that's square, and then measuring down to here. Now we're still going to want, to take 1 millimeter off for a little bit of squish up on the O-ring and a little bit of silicone grease to provide a good seal. But if we measure from the top of the O-ring to there and say it's 4 mil and we run 3 mil spacer with washers, then in theory that'll give us the ability to push that 1 mil up and then gain a nice seal. Happy days, if it works. That's all measured up, new bolts are cut, and we ended up with a couple of mil to make up. So, without further ado, let's put it in. Also, when you're putting your bolts in to test them after cutting them, make sure you put some blue roll in your hole. Because if you drop a bolt inside your engine, that'd be a very bad day. Shall we? That's all popped on. Now we won't do them up just yet. We'll offer our distributor in to centralise the bracket around the hole, mesh it with the gear, nip these two up, and then we can withdraw it to set our timing. Also, one thing to consider, we've chosen a relatively decent size O-ring that's nice and snug on the body of the distributor, but also we've chosen one that's got a nice bit of squash to it. There were a few in the box that were a little bit tough. And that 1 millimeter push to seat the O-ring, if you haven't got the push, then I'm hoping it's going to make all the difference and get us a seal. We shall see. If not, it'll be off the job, off to the machine shop, O-ring groove, and then go from there. But the shape of the hole doesn't look the best, so I think this is the best option. It's well worth doing a little bit of measuring and cutting and fettling to try and get the result that we want. Fingers crossed. Right, I know it's impossible to see, but you're going to have to take my word for it. That is all nipped up, centralised, and I've taken the distributor back out and I've measured with a vernier with the depth gauge from the bracket to the block, and I've taken the distributor out and measured from the top of the O-ring to the top of the boss. We've got a mil and a half of push on that O-ring. I've put the distributor in, I've tightened the bracket up, and it's nice and secure. So we've got good contact from the O-ring onto the body of the Dizzy, and we got good contact onto the block, and now our bracket is working again. So as far as I'm concerned, it's the fix. Get it running and try it. And also now we'll work round and I'll tell you what the fix has been for the other oil leaks on the other side of the engine. Right, the other leaks, the equally frustrating and annoying ones, trust me. Because some of these leaks, when you initially fire it up, they don't leak. You get about 10 minutes in and it all starts to get towards temperature, and then something leaks, and then you turn it off, you cool it down, you fix it, and then it all gets really hot again, and then something else that wasn't leaking starts leaking. And it's been very frustrating, it really has. I mean, that little coolant cap where the heater pipe would have been if you're running a heater, that just needed a little bit of sealant. So we pulled that one off, bit of sealant, topped the coolant back up, that's been good as gold. Now then, the plate on the bottom of the engine, where the old fuel pump would have been when this engine was in an Austin Atlantic back in the very early 50s, that was just pull off, scrape, clean, new gasket, and a little bit of a helping hand on the gasket. And also just at the top of the tappet chest cover, just in a tiny little spot. It almost looked, because it was running off the bolt head, like it's the bolt head, but we pulled it off and it wasn't. That was just a tweak up job. So fingers crossed on that one, they're all dry. The rocker cover gasket on the top, just a little nip up and that's it, job done. So, oh, and also there was a little leak. It looks like we've done a terrible job, but I assure you we haven't. We've done the best of our abilities. The tacho cable, the little thumbs, the little knurled nut, that was had a little weep on it. So when it got hot and it all expanded, you could just reach in and just tweak that one up a little bit as well. But if you speak to anybody, they'll say Healey's always leak, Healey's always leak. But at the same time, there's no point in building something to this sort of standard that we're trying to achieve and then just saying, oh, leak, we'll deal with it, because that's not the way it should be. I mean, I would argue that you should be able to make it not leak, or at least leak such a small amount that it's livable. But these few little more than minor oil leaks that we've attended to have been worth doing, mainly the distributor, because that's been a massive pain. If any of you lot have watched all the way to the end and watched us fix oil leaks on a new engine, you're a hero and you deserve a medal, because that must have been like sticking pins in your eyes or watching paint dry. So if you chose us instead of putting pins in your eyes, fair play to you. I promise I'll try and make next week's video a little bit more interesting, because we're getting to the stage where we need to come at you with something a little bit more interesting, because it's all little fiddly odd jobs at the moment. So to try and make a worthwhile video out of it is tricky. But if you've got leaks on your Healey in those particular places, at least now you'll have a little bit of an idea of potentially how to fix them. As always guys, if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more from us, don't forget to subscribe. Have a wonderful week, as always, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Should we edit that bit out?